Hey everybody, welcome to Sex is Medicine, your number one resource for holistic sex education. I am Miss Devi Ward Erickson with my wonderful friends once again this evening to have a juicy, enriching, and vital conversation about sexuality, spirituality, pleasure, and personal growth. With me this evening are my friends and colleagues and Tantra team Sangha members. In the upper left-hand corner, we have the wonderful Miss Rosie Bitts. Lower left-hand corner, Karen Craig, and underneath me, Miss Lucia Vasquez. And so today we're going to have a conversation about sexual healing for women, the feminine perspective. And in this context, we're talking about cisgendered women because there are issues of healing that transgender women can speak to a lot more fluently than we probably can, being cisgendered women ourselves. So the focus of our conversation is going to be based on what we know through our own experience and through the people that we work with. And so when it comes to sexual healing for women, I just want to preface this all by sharing with you guys that the concept of sexual healing was completely new for me when I was introduced to Tantra. Sexual healing at that time, 12 years ago, was not on my radar. It was not a topic of conversation that was ever introduced. It was not a concept that I was ever introduced to, and it's really not part of the mainstream discourse about sexuality. When I'm out in the regular world, and I tell people what I do, and they talk about sexual healing, they're all kind of like, huh? Like, what do you mean? What needs to be healed, right? So it's not a common concept. But the reason it's so vital, in my opinion, is because so much of the wounding that we carry around our sexuality unconsciously directly impacts every other area of our life. And that was a huge revelation for me. When I started going through the process of sexual healing and understanding that there actually was stuff to heal, I got to see how so much of my inability to feel safe in my own body, to express my truth, my feelings of complete worthlessness, and just inherent shame were all wrapped up in my sexual wounding from childhood and later on as an adolescent and as an adult. And as I began to heal my relationship to my sexuality, these other issues healed and cleared up too, and have allowed me to become the wonderful person in the world that I get to be today. So I wanted to have this conversation, not just with me, but with some people that I trust and who have been examining this concept for several years and who are actually trained and qualified to teach other people to walk through this process themselves, to have several different angles and several different viewpoints, and several different lenses through which to view this concept of sexual healing and see where there's overlaps and see where there's individuation as well. So without further ado, I'm going to have us go around and talk about sexual healing. So in your opinion, Rosie, why is sexual healing so important specifically for cisgendered women?
I think it's because very much of what you were saying is that it's really hard for us to be living a fully enlivened life if sexually we are shut down. Right? For me, sexuality and creativity are two sides to the same coin. And creativity is everything, right? Creativity is everything from having children to going to your workplace and being able to put on your creative mind, even if you're a banker, like creativity doesn't just mean being an artist in the world, it's how you go about living your life and dreaming dreams, essentially. And when your sexuality is shut down, it squashes that creativity as well. So I think that's why it's so important that we do sexual healing. And as women, I've worked with hundreds, probably maybe thousands of women at this point in time through burlesque and in the arts, and now also in recent years in Tantra. And I've only encountered a couple of those women who have not experienced some level of sexual trauma. It's really hard to get through this life without experiencing some level of sexual trauma. And we deserve, and as we've talked about in our group before, and I know you've done episodes about this, our nervous system goes offline. We actually need it to be physically healthy. We need to actually have our sexual and reproductive health needs to be intact as well.
And that's such a great point that you make, that connection between sexuality and creativity. Because I remember in Naomi Wolf's book Vagina, she makes a direct correlation between female sexual pleasure and dopamine.
Yeah.
And dopamine being the hormone of like inspiration and creativity and self-confidence and empowerment and all of that, and how when we have orgasms or when we feel empowered in our ability to advocate for our pleasure, how that increases our dopamine. And then there's a direct translation to how we show up in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We get to be more powerful people and just more ourselves, right? If we are able to heal that sexuality or have it be intact throughout our lives.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And how about you, Karen? So what's shown up for you in regards to sexual healing when you began your, not just your Tantra journey, because you've been exploring for many years in your life. So when it came specifically to sexual healing, what kind of issues arose for you?
If you're speaking about me personally, and I feel like kind of my story and my experiences are similar to a lot of women's. And so when we talk about trauma, we can be talking about, you know, major traumas like abuse, sexual abuse, rape, those kinds of things. But then there are also just the sort of everyday traumas that women experience that they may not realize are occurring, and especially with their sexuality. So for example, GYN trauma. You know, just going to the GYN and having that exam and the speculum and all of those things like is a trauma to our bodies being entered before we're ready to be entered. You know, having our experiences, whether it's a first experience or, you know, many experiences beyond that, where our partner hasn't really known because, you know, their sex education is really porn, and, you know, very little beyond that. And so not really even knowing how to artfully enter our bodies and engage with us sexually. And then our own ignorance around it. Like there's so many women who don't really know what their own parts are, their own, you know, what their own clitoris actually looks like, how their nervous system works, how all of the chemicals work together. And they're unaware of those things because women aren't taught those things. No one in the culture is actually taught those things. You know, when we teach, I'll ask, you know, when was your last sex ed? It's like 7th grade, like how not to get pregnant and STD. Like nothing about pleasure, nothing about how we're wired, designed, very little even about consent and what that really means. So, you know, for me, even like childbearing, like all of those things are a stress on our reproductive organs. Women carry a lot of stagnated energy in their reproductive organs, in their vaginas, in their yonis. Much is carried there, their traumas are carried there. So really learning how to connect, like learning how to connect with your own yoni, with your own vagina, with your own womb. And, you know, it sounds woo-woo, or it sounds, you know, like, oh, that's easy, but it's really not. Like there's so many women who just don't even realize that they are disconnected. You know, it's like they have had sex, they've had babies, the whole nine, and don't realize that they don't have a truly intimate relationship with their own vaginas. So, you know, for me, that alone was an awakening. You know, just having that, going through the various practices that we've learned in Tantra through authentic Tantra and practice and now teach, really how to connect with ourselves intimately in that way before we can really connect with someone else intimately.
That's so powerful, because that exactly is true in my experience as well. So I remember it was like, because we don't receive, we don't know what we don't know, right? And because we don't receive any education about what our actual sexual potential is, we don't know what we're missing. And when we first, exactly, like I had sex, I didn't have babies, but I had just whatever it is to be a woman. I thought I was sexually empowered because I had sex with lots of people. That's what I thought sexual empowerment was. I didn't realize that being afraid to touch my own vagina was a symptom of wounding, right? Was not a place of empowerment. And so that concept of coming home to our own bodies is so foreign because we don't even know that we aren't at home in our bodies until we have a different experience. And we're so conditioned to avoid that, particularly the genitals. Like one of the things I often say is we're taught to, a relationship with our vagina consists of washing it and wetting it. That's it. That's the totality of our relationship. So we're either washing it to clean it or we're trying to get it wet for somebody else. But actually, even just having a non-sexual relationship with our vaginas, just to be comfortable, like looking at them and checking them out and saying hello and noticing what they look like and not feeling shame and disgust about our vulvas is revolutionary. Yeah. And how about you, Lucia? So something that I really valued in some of our conversations when we spent time together in person at the retreats is I remember you talking about, in regards to sexual healing, a really unique perspective that you had being Latino or Latina, and how there were things in your culture in relationship to sexuality and sexual healing that were very specific to your culture. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yes. Yes, I remember in some of our conversations, for me personally, coming from the Hispanic culture, there is a lot of experiences that come about with that are trauma experiences, with regards to having shame around just even, for example, with your partner, it's a culture where the woman doesn't have a voice. They don't have choices or options, and maybe their opinion doesn't matter so much as to the males or the masculine side of things. And so growing up in that kind of a background was definitely very difficult. There were complications in my previous relationships, and it did take a while to get over that and overcome that. And I went through a lot of therapy. I myself am a survivor of sexual abuse, and in that is the culture also is in that, is part of that. And so I went through a lot of regular therapeutic sessions. And for myself in my journey with all that, I would have to say that it wasn't until I started learning the Tantric, the authentic Tantric practices that truly helped me to overcome a lot of these obstacles. Mm-hmm. And even after so many years of being in regular therapeutic, even dyadic therapy, just a handful of different kind of other therapies, there was still nothing that was discussed with the root cause. There was still nothing discussed of, my vagina, and even saying that and going a little bit more deeper into what that even means. Mm-hmm. And so there was, no matter how much I learned coping skills, it still came back, and so the root cause still came back. And once I started learning how to reconnect with myself and even giving myself the permission to do so, started opening a lot more doors, started peeling off those layers. And little by little, naturally, I was experiencing a lot of things that I hadn't experienced in a very long time.
Wow. Yeah. And I love how beautifully you spoke to how these traumas live in our bodies, right? That's why it's so important. That's why we can't talk ourselves out of trauma, because it lives in the body, it lives in the nervous system, and it lives in the cellular tissue. So that's why it's so important, to actually touch our vaginas in order, or have them touched in order to heal, to reclaim that area of the body. And something that you touched upon, Karen, that I want to tease out a bit more is this concept of micro traumas. Right? So we have the big traumas, the cataclysmic, the things, the obvious traumas like sexual abuse or sexual assault, or something that's a violation to the physical form. But there's also all these micro traumas, these experiences that are normalized in our culture, but which are actually deeply traumatic to the psyche and to the nervous system. And that you pointed out also, Lucia, culturally, there's also cultural micro traumas. So in your experience, Karen, what are some of the micro traumas that you've observed? I know you touched upon a few of them, but some of the micro traumas that you've observed in maybe some of your clients that they haven't been aware of are traumas, but when they start working or they start addressing this issue, they realize, aha, that was actually a trauma.
So it can be anything from like being teased when they were younger, or seeing somebody else being teased. Like there isn't much focus on being the witness or the observer of someone else being injured. So even if, for example, they weren't injured, but they watched their parent always being berated by another parent, or, watched another child being teased, all of this is stored in their own body. It's like the body doesn't really make a huge distinction between something happening to someone else and something happening to us, because it's responding to our reaction to it.
Yes.
So we're traumatized by what we're seeing, and then that trauma lives in our own bodies. So, it's anything, along those lines. It's being told that the way a woman is dressed, for example, is unacceptable in some way because it's inviting something or sending a message. And so then, women feel like, okay, they need to close down, to be less of who they are. And so like almost anything can be a trauma, because trauma really is something that happens that our nervous system isn't able to process at the time it happens. So like little things happen to me, like when I was a kid, I missed the school bus and there were some kids looking out the window laughing. Like that was a trauma to me in that moment. Now, or even maybe the next week, it wouldn't have been, but then that kind of lives on in your body. And, one of the things that Rosie was saying is that people don't realize, and women don't realize, the extent to which something that seems pretty innocuous, seems like it was a pretty benign event. And they just keep moving, move on, because that's what we're taught, just move on and just, pretend it didn't happen, whatever it is. And then they don't realize that that's still showing up in all kinds of ways. It could be showing up in the way that they're engaging with their own children, or the way they're moving in the workspace, their inability to even, perhaps express their desire for a raise, or something like that. Like their own voices are really like suppressed and oppressed. And it's from like those traumas that they don't realize were traumas, those micro traumas, or those adverse childhood experiences. Like there are all kinds of names for it, but it's showing up in so many ways that they don't realize. So once they start recognizing, oh, like this is how this is showing up in my life, then they can start that process of healing that, or shedding that, and expanding beyond that.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And how about you, Rosie? What are some of the micro traumas or innocuous traumas that you've seen either in your own life or working with these wonderful, fabulous women that you've had an opportunity to work with?
I think it's just so hard to get away from in our society. They are really everywhere, from shaming small children for naturally exploring their bodies, right? There's a lot of shame. And as parents, those of us who've had children, there's a lot of pressure on us to shame our children when they explore their bodies. And a lot of confusion too, that, if you've come from a place of having sexual trauma, confusion as to what is appropriate for your child to do and what is inappropriate, right? We're not taught any of that. We're not taught that we are naturally sexual beings in utero and beyond. That's usually something, if we're lucky, we get to learn about. If our children are lucky, we get to learn about this. So that's a micro, trauma that's happening at micro or macro from day one. Going to the doctor, being denied your sexuality without even a gynecological exam. But how many women are shut down at the doctor when they try to talk about sexuality? I had a client who was told, who went to a sexual specialist, a medical sexual specialist, was told she was too fat to experience pleasure. That she had to lose some weight and she was legitimately too fat. And so until she could diet and get into a better fitness regime, she just could expect not to ever experience sexual pleasure.
Wow. That's, it kills me. Like, if you have a PhD, you can say anything. I mean,
yeah.
It's a license to just say whatever the fuck you want and nobody cares.
Well, I would say that's a macroaggression for sure on so many levels.
Yeah.
But even the subtleties of going into your doctor, I've had clients who are like, why is my libido gone? I just went on this birth control pill, and the doctor is in full denial and is like, no, birth control has nothing to do with your libido. Sorry, you just don't feel sexual anymore.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And I know for me, some of the things that showed up for me that were real ahas as I began, literally, like, this image in my mind, like, literally, it's a terrible analogy, but like excavating the cave of my vagina. It was like we were digging for gold. Like, literally, every orgasm was like a jewel, right? But it came at a cost, so to speak. It came after shedding tears and pain and snot. And this gem of an orgasm would blossom. But some of the shedding, some of the things I was surprised about was like having a boy not call me back. Like, who knew that was in my left ovary? Like I would have done that, but it arose sure as shit during a tantra yoga session as a pain in my left ovary, and as that pain began to break up and dissipate, the memory arose of how heartbroken I was over that, right? And how that heartbreak lodged in my body. Or for me, growing up as a young adult in Detroit, and walking down the street was not safe for me. It was terrifying, just having to leave and go out my door, and because there were just a tremendous amount of men who felt as though they had the right to touch me. Just because, so men touching me my entire life, and not even like intentionally like grabbing me in that way, but just even touching my shoulder, or very inappropriately like grabbing my butt as I walk down the street. And you were so right, Karen, we're taught to just like push that aside and just keep moving. And so every time we just kind of squash it down and push it aside, where we're squashing it down is in our vaginas. And then we wonder why our vaginas are numb. And we can't feel, and we can't orgasm, or we have anxiety, or whatever. All of those are trauma symptoms from all of the unprocessed emotion that we're taught to carry throughout our lives. And and we grow up in a society where sexual violence towards women is condoned. That it's the president of the United States is a sexual predator. It's completely condoned. So it's all pervasive. I think that's the conclusion, that it's all pervasive. So then what do we do about it? Where do we even start? So I'll go to you, Lucia. So what was the little aha moment for you that you realized, hey, I need to actually address my vagina specifically? Like, I need to touch it, I need to pay attention to it, because all that talk therapy has been good, not distant talk therapy. I think it's necessary. It can give us coping skills, but it doesn't necessarily give us healing skills. So what was the awareness that you had that you realized you needed to do some actual healing instead of just coping?
I think that for me, a lot of it came when I started learning about the tools that Authentic Tantra has to offer, and also being in a community or an environment to be able to share that with others. And so knowing that okay, wow, we're all going through the same thing. And so that was extremely helpful. I had not been able to experience something like that before. And so I knew that there was still stuff there that existed that I needed to get through. I just didn't want to.
Yeah.
You know, and so I just kept, you know, putting it aside, pushing it. I'll tackle it one of these days, you know, and like I said, things keep coming up, you know, and if it's not even through me, I see it through my own kids. And so it started to come up a lot more, and these obstacles. And so for me, I would definitely have to say that I really dove in deep once I started doing the actual practices.
Mm-hmm.
And just also one more note on the little smaller micro traumas is that I wanted to just point out is just being able to experience emotion as a pleasure, specifically crying. For me, that was a hard one because in my culture, you get in trouble, you start crying, and it's like you get spanked. You know, I'm going to spank you more if you continue to cry. And so, you know, I was taught to hold that in, you know, and not be given the opportunity to express that emotion, let alone let it be something pleasurable, you know. And so that was a huge thing for me coming out with the whole crying emotion, being able to share it, express it, own it, and know that and feel that it's something that can be very pleasing. And that all came out with my own journey of the tantric practices.
Wow, you make such a wonderful point because it takes so much courage to begin that healing journey, and often what we're afraid of is feeling the emotion associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
But if we can reframe it so that we experience emotional release as pleasurable, then it's not scary anymore.
Right.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. How about you, Karen? What was it that you made you want to address your sexuality directly, as opposed to kind of dancing around it the way we're taught to in life? Grab it by the vulva. What made you want to grab your sexual healing by the vulva?
Like kind of my whole life, it's been about, you know, exploration, like energy work. So exploration of like all aspects of myself. And so like really coming into a recognition that even those kinds of things, like everything's from the waist up or the thighs down, you know. So it's kind of like our reproductive organs, except, you know, as they're pathologized, you know, like they're, you know, something's not working properly. It's like there's no focus on that. And so for me, it was like, okay, so there's this part of me, this huge part of me that I want to address directly, that I want to know directly, that I want to make a connection with directly. I mean, everything from hormones, you know, like, okay, so, you know, what are my hormones doing, and what ways are there, you know, to address that? And so like with authentic Tantra, even just learning like the movement, you know, like yoni yoga and things like that, where it's like literally changes your hormonal picture just by the doing of them. Just like getting to know myself. And I remember actually, because you were my coach, and the first time I did orgasmic awareness practice, you know, with my, you know, just alone, and just like, you know, like got everything all set up, and I was like, okay, this is great, I'm doing great. And then just like, as soon as I started, like just burst into tears. It was like, oh my gosh, you know, like what the heck, you know, happened here? And I remember, you know, calling you, and you said, you know, yay, that's what's supposed to happen. I'm like, really? You know, because it's like my orientation up to that point was like, well, I obviously flunked this. You know, so, but that was a part of connecting with myself, and really like a part of me, but that was like, you know, had taken up residence in that part of my body, you know, in my vulva, and was, you know, a blockage, had become a blockage. And it was really giving voice to that. Like those tears weren't like just my tears. It was like the tears of that place that had been wounded, you know? So it's like, you know, things like that, like when you experience those, then you just want to keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. And
beautiful. And you make such a great point. It's like, until we do the practice, we don't even know that there's anything there to heal often, right? So that was my whole journey with Tantra. There was no like healing on my radar. I wanted to be enlightened. I thought I was leaving my body. I was in for a big rude awakening that was about coming back to my body. If I had known that, I would have said, no, thank you. It was just doing the thing that I was like, whoa, oh my God, I didn't know that this was there. And getting to the other side of it was what made it so rewarding for me. It was like, whoa, the holy crap, that's so much there. But then digging a tunnel and getting literally to reconnect with that divine light that is us. Oh my God, that was so exquisite. And so that gives courage to continue down the path. How about you, Rosie? And for yourself, but also for your clients and the people that you've worked with, what are some of the little red flags that you've seen that cause people to say, okay, it's time to stop effing around. Let's address sexuality directly.
So I think for me, I've had an idea that there's needed to be some level of sexual healing for myself and for the world. I was really lucky that I grew up with a stepfather who was a sex therapist for a number of years when I was a teenager. So we had lots of great literature around my house. And I had an idea that there were inspiring women out in the world. I remember specifically like being really inspired by Susie Bright as a young teenager. And knowing that there was something more, even though I couldn't directly access it myself. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, really, when I started my deep journey of sexual healing was after I had children, and I just felt so invisible. I had my first child at 20, and I felt like that just completely erased who I was as a sexual being to the world. I was now a mom. I was no longer a sexual being. And I just didn't see anybody in the world at that time, that's 25 years ago now, who could be like considered a good mom, you know, an intellectual or a smart businesswoman, and like a wanton woman, a sexual being, a femme fatale. And that was at like 20, right? So in that early time, that's when I really was like, I need to go in and heal and start healing these wounds. And my first stop on that journey was through burlesque. And really what burlesque did to me was so normalize bodies, because there's all different bodies and ages and genders and, you know, sexuality and all of that. And really normalize being with people who are in a zone of expressing sexuality. Right? So that was kind of my first inroad. What I see from my clients is often they're the same sort of thing as me, a crossroads in their life. Right? They hit a time in their life and they're like, no more. And at some turning point, maybe they're leaving a marriage, maybe their children have grown up, maybe they've just had children. But there's something where it's just like all the things, the parts no longer fit together. And that's when, for some reason, that's for you know, women specifically, but I've worked with men as well, but that's when it starts to come up to the surface, I think. Yeah. And because I think our sexuality is like the root, the core, and people feel it underlying. Yes. And maybe they don't intellectually know, but they're having that sense of feeling that sense, right? And also a want of more. So like you know, I reclaimed being a slut, and happily so, and, you know, really went and sowed my wild oats. But in that time, I was, you know, I call it like trying to fuck myself to enlightenment, trying to plug myself into somebody else to get to divinity. And one of the things that has been so powerful for me through Tantra that nothing else was able to really connect me to was being able to connect to my own divinity through my sexuality and not needing anybody else. If I happen to have a wonderful partner and consort that's beautiful and special, but I don't need them to connect me to divinity, I can do that for myself.
Yeah. Wow, that's so profound. Because again, you're absolutely right, particularly for cisgendered heterosexual women. We are taught from the time we're little girls, at least our generation, Generation X, is that you are a damsel in distress or a little maiden, and then the right dude, Prince Charming, comes and he gives you the kiss of life, and you wake up, and now you get to be a sexual being for him and with him. But we're not allowed to explore our own vaginas. Don't you dare put anything in it, because that's his space. That's for his penis. Like, I literally thought that when I was like a teenager, and I would self-pleasure, and I literally would have the thought, I cannot touch my vagina because that is for his penis. I was like, I can touch my clitoris, I can touch my breasts, but I was saving my vagina for a man. It was not my vagina, it was his property, right? Nobody told, my parents never told me that. I just absorbed that from society and media and just, you know, the soup that we live in, the sea that we swim in. So I love that you brought up that point, because we are so socialized or conditioned to orient and value our sexuality based on our male partners, right? Even, you know, we've had a good sexual experience if he comes. I remember telling my partners, I don't need to orgasm. Your orgasm is enough for me, right? So I went my entire life not having orgasms and substituting my orgasm for my male partner's ejaculation, essentially, because you get all that rush of their good energy, right? So that just absolutely. So that journey of reclamation begins with being willing to experience our own erotic, wild fuck for ourselves, not dependent on a partner, but with us, to be able to fuck ourselves better than we've ever been fucked before.
Yeah.
That was huge empowerment for me. I was like, and that's when I started to bring in different partners, right? I was like, well, I can fuck myself better than most people. So if you want to dance with Devi, you're going to need to fuck me at least as good. Right? I mean, it raises the bar. It changes the whole playing field when we're empowered to nourish ourselves, to feed ourselves. Yeah, cool. All right. So another point that you brought up, Lucy, which I thought was so beautiful, is this concept of community. The need for community in order to fully heal. And this is a concept that is well known in the trauma world, which is that we cannot heal in a vacuum. Trauma doesn't happen in a vacuum, and we cannot heal in a vacuum. We need community support. And when we're talking about sexual healing specifically, I think the conversation about community is extremely important, because so much of our sexual trauma is normalized. As we were talking about earlier, going to the gynecologist, being slut shamed, you know, if you're wearing something that other women are offended by, you're, you know, slut shamed, or you're being loose, or, you know, sexual violence towards women is condoned in a variety of circumstances. So it doesn't do us any good if we're all these healed beings, but the rest of the planet is still all fucked up. It's a lonely place to be. So how, for those who are wanting to begin the journey of sexual healing, what are some resources? Where would you advise them to begin in seeking out that for themselves, as well as being able to connect with a community to help support them in that journey? What are your thoughts on that? Whoever wants to go.
I know for me, as I mentioned, the burlesque community was a great start, right? Seeking out, and it doesn't have to be burlesque, but seeking out a sex positive community where sexuality is not just normalized, but, you know, it's seen as something good and yummy and fun and okay. I think like that is, and also somewhere, hopefully, we're also bodies, where people are allowed to be in their bodies as they are, and there is a celebration of bodies and sexuality.
Yeah.
Whatever, there's a number of communities, I think, in the world that speak to that, and you can find your flavor. But for me, that's been deeply, deeply healing. And I always go back to that burlesque community. I go to a burlesque show when I want to feel better about my body, because I get to go see awesome naked people dance around, and I'm like, oh yeah, I fit. That's like my body. Or seeing all those different types of bodies like makes me feel like I'm a snowflake and everybody else is a snowflake.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. How about you, Karen? What do you recommend for someone who's just wanting to begin that journey? Any books you can recommend, or you can think of any resources, community or otherwise?
Sort of to piggyback on what Rosie was saying, just for me, like, I love being able to teach to, like, for example, like churches or religious organizations that might otherwise like not be like open, and just, you know, so I mean, you teach to who, you know, who's in front of you, but just even, you know, just being able to open so that women know what their parts are and their partners. So like when we teach like women's anatomy, because, and women their own anatomy, because even just something as simple as that, like that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is a big deal. And even just talking about like terms that we use, you know, so talking about, like, for example, using, you know, if we use a Sanskrit term like lingam, you know, meaning wand of light, and just talking about like how that shifts the culture. Like if a men like viewed their lingams, viewed their penises as an instrument of healing, an instrument of enlightenment, you know, nothing like that's bringing harm, but, you know, is actually bringing healing and was designed that way. You know, and so for them to really like be able to own that, and that be the source of their power. And then, you know, for women, like feeling empowered. So it's like, you know, one step at a time, each person doing their own little corner of the world. But, you know, I really do feel that it changes, like, you know, everybody's talked about what amounts to cultural conditioning. You know, so unless the culture changes, then the conditioning is not going to change.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love that. I love that idea of like you going in and teaching a community. So the entire community is learning together. So you have that support. So you're all on the same page, you all have the same language, and you're all going through this journey together. So that's phenomenal. And that's exactly what's required for us. How about you, Lucia? What are your thoughts on how to get moving in that direction of reclamation?
Yeah, I think that, you know, connecting with someone one-on-one, and then having, like for me, having the additional support, especially right now, there's a lot of resources online and Facebook, especially, where just like you did just recently, movement class online, and you've been doing a variety of different classes, and those are really, really awesome, because in particular for the movement, everybody gets to experience what these movements mean and how it feels, and it has nothing to do with anybody body shaming or saying negative things. It's just you do what you want to do, you know, and it's your thing, and you get to own it, and it's a wonderful feeling to be able to experience that with others. Even we're social distancing here, but it's still really, really good to do this online, you know, and be in that non-judgmental zone for, you know, a time frame here. So I definitely like that you can go and, you know, search for different groups that are going to be supportive for what it is that you're, you know, that you're interested in and what you're trying to explore. I myself, I try to boost, you know, and post things that, because I support everybody. I sometimes will share things that have to do with naturism, with BDSM, with kink, with exploring sexuality, with breath work, with exercise and movement. And so just kind of wanting to get it out there for those who share, you know, similar experiences, similar lives.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. And I love, Rosie, what you had shared about it's not just about normalizing sexuality, it's about celebrating sexuality. And so for me, one of my places that I really find nourishing to play is in swingers communities. And I'm not a swinger, not a practicing swinger, but I love being around other people who are shameless about their sexual expression, who aren't afraid of sex. You know, like partying with people who are afraid of sex is very different than partying with people who are unashamed, that are free in their expression. And the beautiful thing about that freedom is you don't have to act on it. You can just allow the energy to move and play and dance and explore it without actually having to do anything concrete about it. So that environment of not just acceptance, but celebration of our sexual energy is so crucial to that sense of community healing. Yeah, all right. Well, we are almost out of time, so I have one more question for us to play with. And so it is how, when we are in intimate relationship, whether it's like a long-term relationship or maybe it's just, you know, a fling or one night stand, what is one thing that you would tell, and I'm going to have us focus on male partners right now, because though the same thing can happen in same-sex relationships, in my experience, we're going to focus on giving the men the information they need to support their yonis, owners, and healing. So what is one thing that you wish men knew in how they could support their female partners in sexual healing? Does that question make sense? What is one thing that you wish they knew to help them support their female partners in sexual healing? What do you say, Rosie?
Oh, okay. I'm going to give you two things.
Okay.
Number one, tantric speech, words of love and affirmation, really speaking to like your partner and saying what it is you find beautiful, attractive, sexy, alluring, and bringing that not just into the bedroom, but into your daily speech, right? Like whispering in your partner's ear, oh, you look so beautiful right now, or I love, you know, the curve of your back, or any of those things, and talking directly to her yoni. Like, talk to our freaking yonis. Tell us how you love they smell, how they taste, how they look at them under some sunlight, and be in awe and be reverent. And then the second thing that I found super, super healing through this process is pick a time and be willing to show up for your partner and give her as much sex as she needs, as much pleasure as she needs. I think as women, we get cut off, that pleasure gets cut off. We are programmed, all of us, men and women, that after an ejaculation happens, that's the end of pleasure. And I think that's a trauma for most of us.
Absolutely.
So it's been so healing to be able to, you know, have a 3-hour session or an 8-hour session where I have a partner who's like, yeah, you want more pleasure? Tell me what to do. I might be falling asleep. Maybe we're using a dildo now. Maybe I'm using my hand. But you want more pleasure? Let's do it until you're done. And being able to have that expansive time was deeply healing to my body.
A smorgasbord of pleasure.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. How about you, Karen? What is one thing that you wish men knew about how to support their female partners in healing sexually?
I think just the concept, you know, we talk about like Tantra being a team sport. And so that like we're literally on the same side. You know, this isn't like, you know, we're not like this, you know, it's we're woven together and we're moving through this together. So my expectation isn't that you come in knowing everything, because you can't know. You can't, because it's an exploration. And really kind of viewing it that way, that this is an adventure. Like, we're on an adventure together and we're exploring, you know, what, like my body and what, you know, I enjoy and what I need and what I want, and then exploring you. What do you need? What do you want? And so that we're really in this together in a very different way, I think, than people interact. You know, it's not like this interaction of body parts. You know, it's like this true, like, heart to heart, mind to mind, and soul to soul connection where we're having fun. You know, I mean, like, we focus on, you know, like the sort of orgasmic thing, but how about like this is fun? You know, we're having fun together, you know, on this adventure, in this exploration. And so since Rosie got 2, I'll do another one.
Yeah. The 2 things that you wish they knew.
Which really is what I said before, like men really knowing that they're designed to heal us, you know, so that it's like they're so just knowing that, becoming empowered to do that, and then acquiring the tools to do that, so that they are really stepping into what their I believe intended role was, which was to be our healers.
Wow. And you want to feel like a man? You hold a woman in healing space that you've just fucked her into a heart awakening with the power of your lingam. You can last as long as you want because you've got control. You've mastered your ejaculatory response. And you want to feel like a man when she's all broken and open and oh my God, that's manhood. Like, that's sexual maturity for men right there.
Yeah.
And we love that. You want us to yin out? You want us to stop nagging you? Fuck the taste out of our mouths. Fuck us. Get you
Amen. Amen.
How about you, Lucia? What's one thing? Two things. What's two things that you wish male partners knew about how to support their women partners or female partners in sexual healing?
I would say education and communication are probably the two big ones for me. Education in regards to the main, many times I see women come in and the main thing has been, or one of the main things has been the fact that their inability to have an orgasm because their partner always releases before they do. And them not knowing that it takes at least a minimum of 20 minutes for a female to be fully engorged. And so missing out, on that pleasure there, and the males probably don't even know it. They're not educated about it. They don't know that there are 11 plus orgasms for a woman and where those spots are actually located at. And so I think it's very important for, the males to know, or the partners to know about education and the sexual anatomy for women. Yeah. Another one is communication, being able to communicate with your partner those needs and those wants, giving gratitude and honoring one another, because it is something that is together. It is a union, with one another. And in order for that enlightenment to happen, there needs to be a connection between the both. And so I think that it's the communication aspect of it is extremely, extremely important. It brings you so much closer to one another. And then it just adds so much more into your sexual union when you're experiencing that. So.
Absolutely. That's such a salient point. One of my tantric mentors, Carl Atari, used to say that communication is the bridge to intimacy. It's how we bridge, it's union, right? It's how we bridge inside to outside to connect with you. And I'll just add my 2 cents in. So, and rewinding back to who I was in my state of mind when I first started this journey, the thing that I would love for you guys out there to know is that your reactions in the midst of sexual encounters carry so much weight for us. And your approval or disapproval in that moment can impact the rest of our sexual life. So I'm going to give you an example. When I was 19, I used to have all kinds of sensation in my nipples. Loved having my nipples stimulated. I would have nipple orgasms easy. Now, this one boyfriend, and he was going to town on my nipples, and I was coming. Like, my pants were still on. I was coming all over the place. And he stopped, and he was like, stop faking it. I don't believe that feels that good. And he was speaking from his insecurity, but it was devastating for me. And I just shut down. And again, this shutdown is not a cognitive thing. It's not like, I'm going to shut down now. It's just what happened naturally, because that was an emotional trauma for me. I was so open. I was having this orgasm, and I got shamed for my pleasure. I did not have another nipple orgasm until I was in a lesbian relationship when I was 34, 35, I was a little bit older, 37 or 38, with this particular woman. And her pleasure and her pleasure and my pleasure from having my nipple stimulated healed that wound for me. And I didn't realize it was a wound until during lovemaking with her and her stimulating. It was like, it hurt. I felt pain. After numbness, I felt pain, and then that memory arose. And then after that, I was able to have nipple orgasms again. But I carried that with me for like 20 years almost, or 18 years, a long time. Shut down my sensation for that long without me even knowing it. So you guys, your words and your reaction has so much impact. And so being willing to just be present and allow us to express ourselves without shutting us down. And then also as part of that, tears. Your lingam is a tool for healing. We are supposed to cry when you fuck us. That means you're doing a good job. That means your lingam is working. So allow us to cry, because on the other side of the cry is the come. Cry and come, they go hand in hand sometimes. Yay. All right, so that is the end of our time together today. So for those people who would love to connect with you all more and maybe have the wonderful honor and opportunity of holding each other's hands as you traverse this journey together, Lucia, how can people get in touch with you to work with you if they want to dive in more deeply?
Oh, sure, yes. I can be reached on my website. It is embodiedelements-wp.com.
Cool. And we will put that link under this video, so you can just click the link and go. How about you, Karen? Where can people play with you more?
Our website is exploretantra.com, and on all platforms, Explore Tantra.
Beautiful. And you can also work with Karen through the Institute, because she's one of our favorite teachers. And how about you, Miss Rosie? Where can people reach out and connect with you?
Through my website, rosiebitts.com. You can find me on all the social media platforms as well. And I've got a lot of online classes going on, live online classes, and more coming up. So I'm with everybody through the pandemic, doing some fun, sexy healing.
Beautiful, beautiful. So rosiebitts.com, exploretantra.com, and what is yours again, Lucia?
Embodied Elements.
I love it. Embodied Elements. I knew I loved it. I just couldn't remember what it was. Embodied Elements. Those links again will be under the video. Thank you all. Thank you guys so much for this conversation. I want to have more and more and more, because it's so rich and so juicy and so deep and so nourishing. And if you all, our audience, want more, you make sure that you subscribe to Sex is Medicine updates at authentictantra.com. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and all of our social media. We have all kinds of juicy, delicious stuff coming out all the time. And if you're on Spotify, follow this show on Spotify. It's so amazing to be on Spotify. I love it, because I listen to Spotify and I'm like, oh, there's me. Sex is Medicine. It's fabulous. So make sure you follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Sex is Medicine, Authentic Tantra. And we will see you next week for another incredible episode of Sex is Medicine, and how we can use our sexuality and our pleasure to heal. Bye.